That's great. All right. So how do you decide like which client you're going to take on, like, or vice versa? Or how would the person know that you'll be a good fit?
That's such a hard thing to figure out, and it's something that is not taught in law school. By the way, law school does not teach you how to be a lawyer at all. You have to like go out and do it. So I always tell people, if you want to be a lawyer, go sit in a courtroom, go sit on a call, or if you know a friend of a friend of a friend who's doing a negotiation, wherever you can like sit and observe, do it. Because law school is just going to teach you theory. Being a lawyer is actually like watching someone do it.
So through experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But remind me of your question now that I spun off into that.
Oh man, I forgot my own
question. No, you did it.
What was it? Oh man. We'll get back to. Oh wait, no. How does the client determine whether or not
good fit.
You're a good fit and vice versa? Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, the worst type of problems you'll have as a lawyer is picking the wrong client. So what I say is, when somebody comes to you and they're like, "Hey, I want you to represent me for X," don't just jump at it, right? Figure out, okay, first of all, let me sit you down. I don't represent you at this moment. I just want to do some fact gathering. You need to make that very clear, because you can start an attorney-client relationship really quickly, even if you don't want to, okay? Then you talk to them, you get their story. Now, the problem with being a lawyer is you got to be able to suss out who's telling the truth and who's not. Like, you really do have to be an investigator for sure, because people will lie to you because they want you to represent them, right? Like, they have a biased interest. So you have to try to figure out whether they're telling you the truth, and you say, please just tell me the truth. Like, I always say, I can work with the facts, right? Like, I can turn any bad fact into a neutral fact or a good fact. But if you lie to me and I'm surprised by the judge or a jury or, in some situation, I'm going to be screwed and we're going to lose.
Has that happened to you before?
Yes.
Oh my God.
They lie all the time. Clients lie all the time. They lie all the time.
Have you mastered the poker face when they lie? Like, you?
Oh, of course. And then I cuss them out after. I literally so I was in a deposition in a case a couple of weeks ago. This was before I had a big trial. And the lawyer on the other side puts in front of me a document that my client had signed and I had never seen before. We're a year into the case. And I had asked my client whether he had ever signed a contract with this guy, and he said no. So, of course, during the deposition, I'm like, what the? Yeah. So I play it cool. I'm like, oh, you've never produced this, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, well, your client's the one that signed it. I said, okay, well, we need to take a break. Let me review it, because I didn't know it was in the production. So I go outside and I look at my client. I'm like, is this your signature? And he goes, I don't remember signing it. It's like the main contract to the anyway, we got over it. It was fine. But like, you remembered it, dude. It just wasn't good for you. I actually turned it into a good fact for us. Wow. It was actually, if I would have known about that earlier, which is the other problem, we would have settled the case a long time ago. Like, he would have won a long time ago. But I didn't have that information because he thought it was a bad fact. Wow. And so he didn't disclose it to me. It happens all the time. So you really have to kind of figure out who this person is. Are they trustworthy? Do they like you, and will they trust you? Because you as an attorney, any type of attorney, you carry so many secrets. I mean, like, all day long, every day. Even if it's not your case, people will call you, friends of friends, family members, and they'll tell you the most intimate things about their lives because they need help, right? So, like, anytime something bad happens to someone, you hold that information, which is sometimes daunting, right? Like, you got to keep it. You're like the vault, which is why I keep secrets. People always tell me their secrets, so I'm good at that. But with that, you need to make sure you have someone that you really feel like trusts you, because you're going to be telling them things throughout your advice giving that they don't want to do, okay? It's ultimately their decision. They're the client. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty good at convincing them that this is what they should do. And the only reason I'm able to do that is because I've gained their trust throughout the attorney-client relationship. But I will say, sometimes, like, I've turned down cases that were going to be financially great for me because I didn't think that the client was going to be a good client. And to me, I'm far enough in my career where I'm like, I would rather not deal with the headache or the craziness or you trying to sue me after the case is over than this money right now. You know what I mean? Like another one will come around.
Right. So how do you go based off of, you have a gut feeling? How do you determine whether or not you want to move forward with the client?
I think you do have a gut feeling, to be honest. I think especially as women, we kind of dull that in some ways. Like we're kind of conditioned to go away from our feelings. And I really do think that like your instinct is almost always spot on. And I've gotten to the point where I'm confident enough in my instinct that I'm okay with it. Even if it was like not the right decision, it's gonna work out because I went with my gut, I went with my instinct. And so I really encourage people to go, and usually like it's speaking to you and you just try to pretend like it's not there, right? In anything, in work, in relationships, and all that stuff, right? So yeah, it is. And then also, with experience, you can kind of tell, like I've seen you before, sir. It's okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
And the moral of the story is be honest with your attorney.
Yes.
Like they have your best interest. So why lie? So
I know. It's so bad.
That's wild to me.
Well, the other thing is too, a lot of people that are lying, they have been turned down by other attorneys in the past, right? So it's like they're just really trying to get someone to represent them. And then they know, usually people kind of understand that it's actually hard for the attorney to withdraw once they've accepted the engagement. It really is. It kind of gets a little bit tricky. And sometimes, like, if it's a lawsuit, you have to, like, actually petition to the court to get off the case. So people do try to kind of reel you in. And then even if it doesn't work out, they're like, well, you're stuck with me now,
Wow, that's crazy. Oh, when is the right time to hire an attorney, an entertainment attorney?
That's a good question. I will say most things you can kind of figure out on your own.
Okay.
The problem is, like, for example, I'm about to start a business, right? Even I had the pressure of like, oh, well, should I like register like a trademark and a business name and a whatever? Like, you want to do all these quote unquote legal things,
right?
But like there are other things that you can be doing before you get to that point. That actually, because knowledge and like resources are so easy to access at this point in 2017, that like a lot of the groundwork you should be doing probably before you talk to an entertainment attorney. Because the other thing is people can get taken advantage of, right? Like you go to somebody, generally you have to put a retainer down. So that means like $10,000 up front, $15,000 up front that the lawyer holds, and then they bill and it comes out of that basically like a bank account.
Okay.
But that's like 10 grand, 15 grand out of your pocket that if something happens, they have that money, right? You got to get it back. So I always tell people, like, don't be too hasty in just trying to find legal representation or trying to like register things. Do your due diligence, get like a good idea of what you want to be doing, right? Like, what is your purpose? What is your goal? What are your steps? What do you think your steps are, right? Because even when you meet with an attorney, you want to have some kind of direction. Because if you don't have the direction, they're going to kind of fiddle around and you're paying for them to fiddle around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So you want to just kind of have your ducks in a row before you go there. Now, that's for like, if you're an entertainer and you're trying to do your own projects and things like that. There are some reasons why you should get an attorney right away. Like if you're being sued, right?
Yes.
Like don't represent yourself.
No.
It's worth it. Get an attorney. Find one that you can afford. It's worth it. Even if it's like they just give you advice every now and then. Like people who kind of try to struggle through it themselves dig themselves a deeper hole where like an actual lawyer can figure it out up front and avoid you all the headache and the money. So I would definitely advise you to do that. But yeah, it kind of just depends. But I would say a lot of people, they don't want to kind of do the hard work themselves first.
It's true, yeah.
And so they just want somebody to help them, right? But like no one can help you better than yourself.
Preach.
Okay.
Yes, so. This is true. I know you mentioned trademarking and copywriting.
Yeah.
For those who don't know exactly what that is, can you do a little quick breakdown or why they should go ahead and trademark or copyright their name?
Sure. So like copyright. So they're also copyrights, trademarks, and patents. What they do is protect your work. Okay. So that other people can't use it, or if they use it, they have to pay you to use it. Okay. So copyrights are usually like books and songs and things like that. Trademarks are like logos, like symbols, even they can be words as well.
Okay.
Those brand names. And patents are usually like inventions. So that's kind of like the gamut of what we call intellectual property or IP. It's important to protect your work, right? But for example, and this is why having an attorney sometimes is helpful, it's like under trademark law, your trademark becomes stronger the more you actually use it and the more it's out in the market. So if you have some symbol that is associated with your brand, you really can't start protecting it until people recognize that symbol as associated with your product or your brand.
Really?
You can file for a trademark, but it's very expensive, very, very expensive. And like actually using it against other people is hard to do unless you've saturated some part of the market. So those are the kind of things that like if you go to, it's called the United States Patent and Trademark Office website, USPTO. It's very simple. It like breaks these things down for you so that you're kind of prepared. Like, okay, when do I need to protect my work? And some things are protected without you actually having to register them because you're using them and you're showing the market that this is yours.
Okay.
Other things like, for example, trademarks, like you could have the same name, but if it's on a totally different product and the consumer or the people out in the world won't get confused, then you could still use that name. So that's when you need like a lawyer to do what's called a title search. So you figure out if that name is already out there, what exactly it's being used for, whether you can use it for something else. All that stuff, it gets much more complicated. But I would say if you go to the USPTO office, it does a really good job of kind of explaining like what you might need to get to protect your work and possibly when that might be relevant to you.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that because I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
It does. It does. Definitely does. Oh, okay. I thought you just have to automatically like do that as soon as you have a logo. Like, go ahead and trademark.
I know people do. I mean, listen, I wouldn't say it's a bad idea if you're independently wealthy, for example. Mm-hmm. Why not? I don't know, but like, even if you do that early on, somebody can still use your work because you have no money behind it, right? So like, if you're using, like, say you're Apple, but like Apple doesn't mean anything yet. And somebody uses it and they start selling something that's selling like $1,000 a day and you're selling $0 a day, like you're not going to win.
Wow.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. What is one thing, or I don't want to put it into one thing, but what advice would you give someone to avoid when doing deals or signing a contract or just to look out for? One thing to be cautious or careful that you see happen over and over again. Is there anything in particular?
Let me think about it. I will say it's unfortunate, but it's true. If you're talent, most of the time, your first couple of contracts and anything you do, you're not going to really have much negotiating power, okay? That's okay. You can try to kind of move the ball here and there, but at the end of the day, the person on the other side understands that you want the job. And if you don't have the job, you're not going to have another job lined up, right? You're not like Denzel Washington. So sometimes you have to agree to things that like maybe if you had a name or if you were already making money in the business that you would not necessarily agree to. So I wouldn't be like afraid of that. I think that's just like where everybody starts. And that's why you always hear about these lawsuits where people are screwed in the beginning of their careers and then they become like bankrupt. I think there is a point where you do need to have like management or an agent or a lawyer or representatives when you get to the point where you can justify it financially, right? Because there are things that they'll protect you from that you can't really do yourself because you haven't been trained to do. But in terms of like red flags, you know, I do see people are presented with like they'll create something, right? They'll create a song or a project or whatever, and then like they want somebody to go market it or do something else. There are kind of provisions in their contract that basically entitles the other person to their product or their, you know, creation. That's something that I would say you would definitely want to avoid, right? Because this is your baby. So at the end of the day, you can't sign anything that says you're giving your baby away, even if it's like, you know, pursuant to some contingency, like only if this happens, I get to take all your stuff. Like, no. Like, you'd rather be able to keep that or stop other people from taking it. Right? Because that is hopefully going to be like what's actually going to make the money.
Right.
Not the one-off project.
Great advice. Great tips. All right. Well, one last thing.
Yeah.
Is there any tips or advice that you would give anyone who aspires to be in the entertainment industry as an attorney, or just in general, just anything in general, any tips?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people say that they want to be an entertainment attorney. Like, they come to me, they're like, oh my gosh, how can I do what you do? Let me just make sure it's clear, okay? Yes, there are perks. There are amazing perks. Like, I get tickets to fancy shows from my clients when I do well, and my other colleagues who do like banking don't get anything, right? Or they'll get like a gift certificate to a steakhouse.
Right.
You do get to meet a lot of cool and interesting people. You do kind of get to be in the scene, right? But at the end of the day, the work is like reading a contract, understanding finance and numbers, understanding distribution between America and, China. Not like super interesting things. Like, the people are interesting. The work is like being a lawyer, right? So you have to really love that kind of stuff. Like, that actually gets me excited. And I know that makes me strange and kind of a nerd, but I like it.
No, whatever
so
makes you
all
happy.
of the other stuff is just kind of an add-on. It's like extra special. So I think one of my tips would be, don't get into it for the wrong reasons. Like, don't get into it because you just want to like go to parties. Like, you can figure out a way to go to parties without having to spend $100,000 in law school. Let me just tell you. So that would be one. The other thing too is it can be a slow process. Being an entertainment attorney is very similar to being an entertainment person in general, like an actor, okay? You have to really build up your networks. It really is a small town. And so if you're expecting to like hit it like on your first audition, right? In your first year, like, you're kind of in the wrong industry. It's a long game. It really is. And everyone who's in the industry like gets it. But lawyers, like, because we're lawyers and we tend to have this perception that we have a more stable profession, which not necessarily true, but that's for another day. We don't kind of think of it that way. But being an entertainment attorney is exactly like that. It's the grind, it's the hustle, it's the everyday, it's the panning out your business card, it's the being in the right room. That really is a part of this business. And so the most successful entertainment attorneys I know, especially on the talent side, if you want to do the talent side, like, they were representing talent before the talent was good, right? Mm-hmm. So they had to represent like 50 people hoping that one would hit it off. At least as an actor, you're going off your own talent, right? You're like, well, if I'm good enough to be an actor, if I'm good enough to be Denzel, like, I'll make it. And you still might not make it, but at least you like, hey, you have a shot. I'm actually going to have to rely on someone myself making it, right? Ooh. So you have to think about it that way. It's like, you really do, if you want to do it well, you really do have to work harder than a lot of other types of attorneys, because you have to spread yourself thin because you don't know which one's going to pop. So just think of the long game. If this is something that you really, really want to do, most of the successful entertainment attorneys did not become like millionaires until 40s, 50s, sometimes older.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was some great tips and advice right there. I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you so much. It was fun. Have me back.
I will. I definitely will. When I have my knowledge game up, I'll be like, girl, can you help me? Come on through. Let's talk about this. How can we find you on, do you have social media or a website or something?
So you can follow me on Sierra E. Esquire, or ESQ. So SIERRA EESQ.
Okay. All right. Make sure you follow her. Don't harass her, though. And if you ain't got no money, don't hit her up neither.
That's true.
All right. Thank you. It's a wrap-a-roni.
This is a session where queens unite to share their light.